Welcome to the Shopify Happy Hour. On this show, you'll hear from Shopify founders, operators, and growth experts sharing marketing strategies, lessons from the trenches, and real e-commerce insights, all over a different drink or snack each episode. Today's guest is Jason Zigelbaum, founder and CEO of Zigpoll, one of Shopify's leading zero-party data platforms. Zigpoll helps brands collect customer feedback, post-purchase survey data, on-site insights, and customer intelligence that drive smarter marketing decisions. The platform is trusted by brands ranging from fast-growing Shopify startups to companies like Sony, HP, Kraft, Heinz, and Hallmark, and has collected more than 100 million survey responses. Jason has a unique perspective on e-commerce because he gets to see what customers are actually thinking, saying, and doing across thousands of brands. Jason, welcome to the Shopify Happy Hour.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And thanks for the intro. That was great.
Let's kick it off with, we're drinking. It's coffee day for both of us. What do you got over there?
It's coffee day. I feel a little lame for just drinking a black coffee, but it feels, it's Tuesday at noon. It feels appropriate. I'm going with just a nice black coffee that I got from about an average machine downstairs. It's serviceable. It does the trick. Not too hot, not too cold. Quite nice.
Nice. Temperature does make a big difference, right? Because if you get coffee, it's like super hot, especially in like a paper cup, or you're just sitting there and then the cup gets all weird. So you got to have the right temp. And there's nothing wrong with just coffee. I think so. What is it? Caffeine is like the number one drug in the world, right? So we're getting our brains going. We're getting some focus happening. So I'm all about.
I'm in deep on the caffeine train. I feel like I need to cool it a little bit. I feel like it's like a classic sort of like I'm a developer sort of guy. Put in the headphones, drink way too much coffee and just sit in the matrix.
So how much coffee are you slamming during
I used to do like 3-4 cups. I try to stop before 2:30. So 3-4 cups before 2:30. Is that a lot? I don't know. Maybe I was just talking tough.
I guess it depends on like size of the cups, but I'd say normal cups. I think that's solid. I've learned a big thing 2 years back. I would have lots of coffee all morning, and then afternoon I'd pop some espresso, and then maybe another coffee. And I'm like, I wonder why I can't sleep too well.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was like, maybe if I cut it off at noon and stop, drinking coffee like it's my job, maybe I'll sleep better. And that works. So,
yeah, lo and behold, it's always the stuff you least expect.
That's it. Nice. Yeah. So I've got some Stumptown, the original cold brew out of a bottle. So we'll see how this guy is. But speaking of coffee, we were talking a minute ago. How do you typically, if you were not going to get average coffee from downstairs in the lobby where you're at, what would your typical coffee preference be?
I've been a pour over guy for a while, which it's like I get it. It's the ponytail, the hipster nonsense. So I do the pour over. Honestly, I just like it because it's easy. Like appliances are kind of like the bane of my existence because like I just hate seeing stuff on the counter. So you can sort of like do all that with like a normal kettle and it tastes good and it works and you don't have to worry too much. So that's where I've landed. That's works for me. I'm okay with the coffee machine, like the classic sort of like, Hamilton Brewmaster or whatever. But appliances, can't do it. I try to keep my kitchen nice and pristine. So seeing that appliance always bugs me.
Living lean is the way to go, and especially if you're running like a tech business and survey data, you don't want all that stuff getting all bloated. So it aligns. So when you're doing pour over, is there a specific type of like coffee or bean you like to use? Or
yeah, I usually go with the lighter roast. I know there's like the Ethiopian Yirgacheffe is the one that's like the most expensive one. It's nice, floral, fruity, whatever. But honestly, like when you pound that much coffee a day, like I can't be that sensitive about it. So like I'll just sort of grab whatever. Daily roast at the nearby coffee shop, grind it up, and then do the little pour over sort of ritual. And it works for me, But also the coffee machine is also great when you don't have sort of the whole setup ready. Can't find a coffee shop, can't get the right beans, the whole nine. I'm moving back to Miami. I've been trapping for a couple weeks, so I still don't have my full setup, ready yet. But I'm okay with the serviceable black coffee downstairs. I feel like it's almost better because you don't have to think about it as much,
Nice. Well, I'm glad we're both about to get caffeinated up or recaffeinated. So cheers, good sir. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. Let's talk about some marketing shit.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So let's talk about Zigpoll. What problem did you see in e-commerce and just business in general that led you to build what you've built?
I'm going to give you the honest answer, which is perhaps, it doesn't make me look like a genius, but so at first, my idea was, okay, I wanted to make websites more interactive, right? That's sort of like my key insight. That's sort of like driven me to to build the things that I built in the past. And so my thought was, okay, we're just gonna have a little pop-up up here. It's gonna be kind of like a Twitter survey where people can like ask their audience, do you want to see any new product lines from us? Do you want us to bring someone else for like a content series or something? Like, do you want to like focus in on this content or that content or whatever? And it would sort of get people to come back to your website, because I feel like with e-commerce, you go, you buy something, you disappear until you need that thing again. There's no real reason to like check up and see what's going on an e-commerce site. So that was the original intention. I still think that's kind of like an okay thesis, but I don't think that it's something that people like immediately need or necessarily want to pay for. And so what happened was people started using that product for other purposes, right? So like instead of using it for the purpose that I thought they were going to use it for, they started using it for post-purchase surveys. And that was sort of the first light bulb moment where it's like, oh, okay, this product that you built, for like a contextual survey pop-up isn't being used for what you thought it was going to be, but actually it's going to be used for post-purchase surveys because that's what people want. That's what people are getting value out of. And so I just built in that direction. And that's that loop, right, of listening to the market, building sort of like a loose general sort of set of features that is sort of not like focused or opinionated in its use, and then letting the market sort of tell me how they want to use it and then iterate in that direction. So that led us to post-purchase surveys, which has been great. And then because it's sort of like a flexible, non-opinionated software, you can also use it for conversion rate optimization surveys, exit intent surveys, email surveys. There's a lot of different use cases which you can get into that are super useful for e-commerce brands and that niche.
So what were the early days like? Because you're a solo founder even to this day, correct? Like you're running lean and mean. That's fantastic. So what were the early days like? Were you just slamming coffee in the Matrix all day, or were you talking to customers? Like what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, so I think everyone's workflow is different. Going to be different. For me, my history is a product guy. I used to I worked at a digital agency for, 5 years, running, the product side of things, like the tech side of things, right? Like building e-commerce websites and all that sort of stuff. So that was what I knew. And so that was what I did. So I built it, I probably built like a way too fully featured prototype and went to market probably way later than I should. But that was my strategy and it worked. So like, throw something out there and make it pretty good enough where you can get someone to use it, and then listen to their feedback and iterate from there, and really just do that product-led growth sort of cycle. So a lot of being in my home office, my bedroom, slamming coffee and building features and answering emails and repeating that process for years is what got me here now. Now the things have changed dramatically, right? Like now I'm doing podcasts, I'm talking to customers, but the core is kind of the same. It's just more volume, which of course makes everything a bit faster and better. So just sit and type in code. That'll get you where you need to go. I think there's definitely other ways to do it though, if that's not your strong suit, right? Like, I think it would have been smart for me to talk to customers earlier on, understand their pain points first, and then build those. But I can't complain. I got here. I feel like this, it worked. So I'd give it a shot if you can.
Nice. And so speaking of customers, how did you land your first customers?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, thinking way, way back, right? So for context, I had built a Shopify app before Zigpoll. It's called MetaFields Manager. I did it. So I worked at this e-commerce agency. I quit and I was like, I need money. So I built an app on the Shopify App Store called MetaFields Manager. This is like 2016. So this is early innings with the Shopify App Store and sort of before like the complete ascendance of Shopify over everything else. So I had some tailwinds there, and the app did well. It peaked at like 30K MRR or something. Anyways, so that kept the lights on, and I had a base of customers who I could reach out to when I started Zigpoll. But in the beginning, I mean, it's slow. You really just have to sort of sit and scream into the void for weeks, and maybe you'll get one customer, and then when you get that customer, you better talk to them because they're very important. But it's just a slow drip. You got to put the reps in, build something, and then just sort of keep throwing it out there. And fortunately, with the internet, there's a lot of people on it. There's a lot of people out there. Someone will sort of find you and be an early adopter, but it takes time.
Nice. So was early traction combination of being on the Shopify App Store along with outreach from customers of the previous app that you built?
Yeah, that's a good point. So you need like a distribution channel, or at least I would recommend a distribution channel, right? So in this case, it was the Shopify App Store. So, the customer had to find us and they found us on the Shopify App Store, but that's still a much smaller surface area than the internet as a whole, right? Like, to this day, very few people find us organically, like on the web, right? It's paid ads, it's the app store, it's some other app store, something like that. So if you are doing this solo, you should 100% pick some sort of app store, whether it's, the Apple App Store, or maybe it's something even more niche, like the Salesforce App Store, or, the Atlassian or something like that. But yeah, so App Store as sort of like the key distribution channel at the beginning, and then sort of just like a flywheel from there as you get more customers, and ideally you're adding more value than your expense, then it should work. It just takes time.
Nice. Fish where the fish are, right? That's what's nice about it. Sort of app store. Like, if you can build on a platform where there's already customers potentially looking to solve the problems that your tech solves, then that's helpful. Otherwise, you got to do all the other marketing stuff to get the word out.
100%. And like that stuff it's hard to do as one person, right? Especially if it's not your core competency, which it wasn't mine. And then also the Shopify App Store, I feel like, was kind of uniquely suited to me because it's a technical. They're very technical. They have a lot of rules. They have a lot of, they change their API every 4 months. Like, you kind of have to know what you're doing to sort of stay on the ball and be a decent app on the App Store. So I think that suited my skill set. And if you were to do this on your own, you should probably pick an app store that suits your skill set, whether it's that or something else. But just be wary of it. I think I got lucky, right? Like, I can't say I did any of this, thought in advance, but I think that's why it worked out.
Awesome. Good advice. So let's dig into some survey stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you've basically led surveys, and your tech has powered over 100 million survey responses. So you have seen a ton of data and a ton of insights across all different product categories and brands, large and small. From an e-commerce standpoint, what are the most valuable questions e-commerce brands should be asking customers today through survey tech?
For sure. So first off, it depends on the business, depends on the context. I'm going to try and give like some sort of like general stuff that works for most people. So with post-purchase first, right? So you've just completed a purchase. You're on the thank you page. Survey pops up on the page itself. What should you ask, right? The general sort of consensus is that one, attribution question. So how'd you hear about us? So what does that do? It helps you shore up how your marketing spend is actually working for you in terms of driving conversions. So incredibly useful attribution. How'd you hear about us? And then the second one is some sort of like customer segmentation question. So that's going to be a business specific, but it applies to all businesses, right? So it's basically trying to learn who your customer is. And then later down the line, you want to use that information to target them more effectively with seasonal campaigns or whatever. So for example, you might ask, like, how are you intending to use the product? So if you sell something that maybe has multiple uses, you could say like, are you planning to use it for your garden, your kitchen, whatever? And that now immediately segments this customer into how they intend to use your product, and you can target them with different materials as time goes on. Or you could ask who are you purchasing for? That's another very common one, because if someone's purchasing something as a gift, and maybe you're a toy company or you're something that's commonly sold as a gift, you can then segment that customer base, because the person's never going to use your product, so they're going to give it away. So you should target them totally differently than someone who actually is going to use your product. So segmentation, super useful. And then the third one is open-ended. So that's going to be anything else you want to share. And that last one I think surprises people sometimes, but you will always be surprised with what people are willing to share. People actually want to give feedback. I think that's sort of a bit of a surprise for some people. They're like, when I see these things, I just close them or whatever. No, a lot of people really do want to give feedback. It's like they just had sort of like their most important interaction with your brand. They purchased something, they gave you cash. They want to talk to you. They want to tell you things. So an open-ended question at the end also will capture what you don't know that you don't know. And also it might give you information about how people perceive your brand, because typically that can be different than how you think people see your brand, right? So it's like people may see me as in one way, but the way I see myself is totally different. And so you want to surface that information and listen to sort of what the market thinks about you and take some sort of action based on that. Whether you want to lean into it or lean away from it, totally up to you. That's a business decision. But those three are typically the big players, the most important. I think if you're doing those three on post-purchase, then you're doing the right thing, and you're getting a lot of actionable data that will help sort of grow your business and continue to grow your business as time goes on, because the format of the questions and the response data will change as time goes on as well. So it's kind of can be your guiding light, or your North Star, or whatever, or one of your North Stars to help your iterative process of building your business. So yeah, so that's post-purchase. I think that's sort of like a good starting point. But then there's other as well, which I can get into in a sec. But how did that sound? pretty good?
Yeah, that's fantastic. So full disclosure, we've been using Zigpoll at our agency and love it. The tech is super clean. The insights we gather are super powerful, very customizable. So yeah, that's how initially Jason and I connected. And so from a post-purchase standpoint, I'll share a couple different use cases. One is just to reiterate the power of open-ended text. One interesting scenario is we work with a kind of a custom photo brand client that does like restickable peel and stick photos, like really unique stuff, really good for people if they're in college or a retirement home and you don't want to use nails to pop holes in your walls and you want something that can kind of move around with you. So really cool product set. And the brand owner started this, I think it's been at least 10 years ago. We installed Zigpoll and had a post-purchase survey where it's basically like, where are you planning to use it? And we saw all of a sudden, it wasn't every response, but lots of responses. People were saying they were going to use it in an RV, like a camper. And we presented this to the brand owner, and she was like, "What is going on? I've never heard of this." And she's been pretty close to her customer, so completely new use case. We took that, and for me, the way we advise clients on this stuff is one, you got to make sure you collect the insights, right? You need the data, you need the information. That's step one, but that's only like 50%. The other 50% is like, what are you going to do with it? Because you can collect insights all day, but unless you actually do something with it, it's interesting, but it's not improving your business.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where, we then spun off Facebook ads for that audience, and we then built out copy and all this other stuff, specifically going after that market. But then the other thing that brands can do is take the copy that people are actually saying, take the words that people are saying, that your customers are saying, how they're describing your product set. And like you mentioned, if it's very different than how you're describing yourself, update your copy, update your website, update your advertising, because you want to kind of insert your brand into the conversation that people are already having in their own mind. And we've just seen that time and time again, where if we use the actual exact copy that customers are saying, it can improve ad performance, it can improve landing page performance. So yeah, those are just two super kind of interesting things we can do with survey tech. Is one, like find new use cases for products, and then two, take the actual language and apply it into marketing.
Yeah, so 100%, right? Like I love what you're saying, because like it keeps, I keep coming back to the same sort of idea of like, it's meta, but like you ask the market what they want, they tell you, and then you iterate based on that, and then that's it. Then you've just now all of a sudden improved your brand. You improve the value of your brand, and you just improved your business. So the other spots where you can do sort of the same kind of strategy, right, where you have this heuristic, is CRO, so conversion rate optimization surveys. And just for context, so like Zigpoll, yes, you can run on post purchase, but we're agnostic. You can put it on any page. You can put it share it as a link. You can have it pop up on the website as a modal. It can pop up on the bottom left, bottom right, whatever. You can have it, on iOS and SDK, or on iOS and Android apps, whatever. So a CRO survey, the setup is you have a survey that pops up on a product page, typically 60, 90 seconds after someone's been hanging out on the page. And then it pops up and it says something like, does this page contain everything you're looking for? Yes, no. And then a follow-up saying, is there anything else you can share? The yes, no is basically just like a hook to get people to engage with the survey, because when you're on post-purchase, the engagement rate's very high because they just completed a purchase, they're involved, their wallet's out, they're doing stuff. But when they're just browsing your site, it's going to be a little bit lower. So you kind of have to do a little bit of gamesmanship to get them to engage. But anyway, so the data that you get from that pop-up, you can then use to iterate and improve your product pages and improve your conversion rate. So they might say something like, I'm not sure if it would work, or maybe I don't know if the ingredients are going to be effective for me. So then you upgrade your ingredients, or I don't know how big it is. Then all of a sudden you put a scale, next to your product images so people know how big it is. And you just iterate over and over until you basically eliminate all of these sort of like complaints that customers are telling you about, what's preventing them from making a purchase. And then that friction goes away, and then the conversion rate goes up. And so, I did chat with one of our customers who said, like, I didn't ask, he was like, hey, like I've been running this survey and I've doubled my conversion rate just by listening to what people have said. And I was like, what? That's amazing. Like, good for you, man. So it does work. To me, it just makes a ton of sense, right? It's kind of like a no-brainer. Like, of course, you're not bothering anybody. You're only engaging with people sort of who have spent a certain amount of time on these product pages, and then you're just finding out, what they're nervous about, and then you fix it. And the interesting thing about a lot of things is that they are fixable. Like it really is just a matter of updating copy or adjusting product images or, I don't know, just like sharing more information about the product or maybe product reviews, stuff like that. And it's all, fixable and relatively easy. So I think that's a great strategy for any brand is to run a CRO survey as well.
Nice. Yeah. I typically like to relate e-commerce to actual physical shopping because I think a lot of times physical and retailers just will outperform e-commerce stores in lots of different ways. So when we think about what the actual shopping experience is in real life, then a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I should be doing that for my website too.
Yeah.
So every time you go into a store and someone's asking like, hey, did you find everything you're looking for at point of purchase, or how you found us? How did you find us? Or is there something else you'd be looking for that you didn't see? All those questions that retailers have been asking for like decades and decades and decades. We should be asking online too, right? Because if a retailer is hearing, oh yeah, I was looking for women's shoes and never found, I was like, oh well, we need to highlight that more effectively at the front of the store, or we need to have better signage, or we need to have a better flow through the store so people can find this stuff. It's the same thing online, right? It's just harder to collect feedback unless you are specifically asking for it, because in store you're naturally going to see what's happening, you're going to hear what people are saying, but online it's a little bit tougher unless you have tech that's going to help out with that. And that's one reason why I think survey tech is insanely powerful, because of the reasons you mentioned, along with just like listening to customers, improving your marketing, not just your website, but your email, your paid acquisition, your product iterations. You can get feedback on, product feedback as you're going through this process. So yeah, it's kind of it's not rocket science, but I see so many brands neglecting it.
Yeah, it used to be hard, like not that long ago, it was pretty challenging, to do these sorts of things. And so that's, I'm glad I can add value sort of in that direction. And then also I think what's also with AI, right? Like the shift of like people would collect all this data and not know what to do with it or not know how to connect the dots. And that's just kind of melting away. Now that you have these agents that can sort of just like draw all these conclusions across, hundreds of thousands of data points quickly and easily, you just type it up in plain English and they can get it out. So I think like the value of the data has also gone up, right? So maybe before, your hesitation was like, oh, I'll get it, but I don't know what to do with it. That's kind of gone. And we build a lot of features around that, right? Like I spend a lot of time building like AI analysis features that'll surface, any trends that come up, and you can also ask questions about your data and stuff like that. But I think that also is a nice sort of tailwind for me, right? Where the value of the data that you're collecting is just higher because you can sort of suss out, trends much quicker and then keep that iterative process going.
Yeah. So to follow up on that, so this morning, we were analyzing data for one of the newer brands we're working with, and we uploaded all of their product reviews from the past, let's say, a year. We uploaded Microsoft Clarity heat map data.
Nice.
We uploaded survey responses from Zigpoll that we just got live, like, I don't know, a couple weeks ago or something. And fourth was, I'm missing the fourth one. So survey data, Clarity, reviews. We might have scrubbed some Facebook ad comments, if I remember correctly. Uploaded all that stuff into AI, and it was like, what's the data telling us? And then we don't need a team of a dozen data analysts. It's like, hey, Claude, what's going on here? And with this one brand, this is an artist we're working with who sells like really beautiful art prints. And one of the key things was people were having trouble understanding the size for the prints. So it's like, email goes out to client this morning. Here's exactly what all of the data we've been analyzing is telling us. And next change we're going to make on your site, it's going to be, we're going to be uploading a photo guide that's going to clearly show what the dimensions are for all the different sizes, what the white space around the print looks like, how to frame it, like all this stuff that people were literally saying, we're having a problem with this. And that's what's awesome now with AI is, what used to take maybe a week if you're putting in a couple hours a day analyzing all this stuff. Yeah, you have to upload it and you have to make sure the data is clean. And you, of course, have to go through it and make sure it makes sense because, we'll still see lots of stuff where it's like, that's not right. But if you go through and confirm everything's accurate, you can get some really cool insights that, a year ago, 2 years ago was a lot harder to get.
Yeah, no, it's insane. I mean, and it's good to hear that you do that. I do the same thing, right? Where you connect sort of different data sources together. So like in my case, right, like I'll connect, sort of like my barometrics data, so like MRR growth and stuff like that, along with sort of like, changes that we made to the product itself. And also, survey responses, because we have like a contact us form, on the Zigpoll app itself. And it'll help sort of like draw conclusions of like, okay, this change corresponds with, this improvement in MRR, or like this change corresponds with, the decline of this trend of sort of like feature requests, from a contact us and stuff like that. And you really can, people were talking about like data-driven, stuff before, but it was kind of out of reach for like a solopreneur or whatever, or just a small agency. I mean, yeah, sure, Uber can do it or like Google can do it, but like, you're literally talking about teams of people whose job is just to run, data analysis on metrics that, may or may not even be true. But now you can just do it. You can just spin it up, in like the 10, 15 minutes, right? And draw these conclusions. And then you can also action the change, right? You could say like, okay, well, hey, now based on this, trend, what would you do? And you can use sort of like the MCP, I guess, to connect to Shopify, right? So keep it sort of like for e-commerce brands, right? You could, say, all right, find some trends from the Zigpoll survey. And then based on those, on that information from the CRO survey, make the change to the product page itself, through the MCP, and then all of a sudden it adds, these product descriptions or whatever. And so you can actually close the loop as long as you have sort of this input of feedback, from your customers. You can really create like a self-fulfilling loop where you're still sort of in the picture, but you can almost take yourself out of it. So it's kind of crazy. Yeah, and I don't know. It's exciting for me at least to think about because I feel like these loops are really starting to close and speed up and get a lot faster.
For sure, and it should mean better business performance for everybody, right? Because as we can better serve customers, if we're speaking specifically about e-commerce brands, if we can better connect with them, better find out where the friction points are and solve those, customers will save time in their shopping journey. They can find products easier. They can understand what your brand is about. They can answer their questions, get their questions answered more effectively. And brands can get better conversion rates, better performance. They can use that to drive their business faster, bigger. Like it just kind of a win-win across the board. So you mentioned post-purchase obviously is like number one place to start. Exit surveys from a conversion or website revenue optimization standpoint. Have you seen brands, I guess, what other interesting ways have you seen brands use surveys in order to better understand their customers to improve their business across like any area of their business?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a couple of other sort of like different surfaces, right, are going to be like email surveys, and then just like outbound campaigns. So whether that's like an SMS campaign or an email campaign, either one. And they're kind of like bespoke, like one-off sort of things. So like, so some companies, for example, before they even have a website, I think it was a paint company I was talking to a while ago, like they would send an email survey to, I think they had like a 10,000 person customer list from a previous brand. And so they sent it out asking sort of like a question to validate whether or not the product they were building made sense. So that's one use case, right? And that's kind of like a typical one, I suppose. But basically you can sort of like validate your product before you go to market or maybe tweak it based on sort of like your existing data set and your existing customer base. So that's one, like email ones. Others would be sort of just like email campaigns that go out to a customer segment. So for example, maybe you want to find out like the ideal customer profile for people who will have a high lifetime value, with your brand, right? So you'll grab your customer list, you look at the top 100, top 1,000 spenders, and then ask them questions about themselves, right? And so you can build sort of like, this rich profile. And also, by the way, what makes that, better to use Zigpoll for is it'll send the data right back to Shopify for you or to your CRM, Klaviyo, whatever. And it'll build those profiles in there so you don't have to do any extra work. But then you can sort of build these rich profiles of your top spenders. And so one, you'll know how to retarget them better. Men from Mississippi or women from Southern California, whatever. And so you can target them better. And then you can also target them with future ad campaigns. So that way you can sort of really dial in your spend towards someone who's actually going to have a higher lifetime value than the rest. So that's another super useful one. And then the last one would be sort of just like, and again, this is a little bit more brand specific, but like if you have a product that is physical, or maybe you're worried about how your 3PL is performing, you can run like a product delivery survey or an order delivery survey. So that'll get sent out when the order is marked as delivered. You can set it an hour later or a day later, whatever, asking like, hey, how's the packaging? Or perhaps it could be like, hey, did this product fill your needs? Right? If you're like a skincare brand or something and maybe you bought it for a specific purpose, you can dial it in and find out like, oh, this did solve my acne or this didn't. And then you can sort of iterate, based on that. And those are a bit more, brand specific, but you can sort of see like the long tail of it's really kind of hard to find a brand that couldn't benefit from this, right? Like you can always benefit from finding out how people are actually engaging with your products or what they may do when your product goes to market or how they felt about your unboxing. All these things are worth knowing. And I think that to sort of reiterate now that we have such an incredible tool in AI to take action on these data and surface these trends. Not only can you get the data, you can actually do something about it, which sounds obvious. I think the execution was always the hurdle, right? But now that that's sort of melting away, it's like, well, you kind of need to do that to stay in the game.
So speaking of execution, what are you seeing? Because it sounds like you get really good feedback from brands. Going back to the example of brands saying, hey, I use survey tech I use Zigpoll to gather survey data, and then I made changes on website, double conversion rate. That's fantastic. I imagine, any business has customers that are super happy and some clients where maybe it's not as good of an experience or for whatever reason, they weren't like stellar case study. So what would you say separates the clients on Zigpoll who have had amazing performance and results versus the ones where they're like, yeah, I'm using stuff, but I don't know if it's really working. I don't know if, it's really helpful. Like, what are they doing differently? Because it's not about the tech, it's about the usage, right? So how are the best performing brands on Zigpoll using the tech versus the ones that are sort of just have it installed and aren't doing a whole lot with it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So two things. One is knowing or understanding that one size fits all is not always accurate. Like you have to sort of understand your brand. Like if you're just starting off, you have no one on your website, maybe, don't run an exit intent survey and expect it to tell you what's wrong, right? Because, if you have 3 people coming a week, maybe you'll get 1 response, 2 responses a month, and that's not gonna be very helpful. Instead, maybe you want to run a post-purchase survey, or maybe you want to source leads from somewhere else, and send them an email first. Or I think given sort of the model, you'd probably just run a post-purchase survey in that scenario. But that's one, right? Is sort of like understanding your brand, understanding where you're at, and using the tools, in a way that will suit where you're at. You also may want to run offer a discount code, right, in exchange. You want to boost your conversion rate if you have less eyeballs on it. Stuff like that. Sort of, using these tricks to suit you where you're at. It will help you get more value out of the product. And then the other way or the other thing that sort of needs to happen is you need to have some sort of loop where you take action, iteratively, as it comes in with your product data or with your response data, right? So like if you're running a post-purchase survey, you should also be adding tags to your customer base based on how they responded, right? And then you should be using those customer segments to send remarketing campaigns, maybe send them into Google Ads to do some sort of advanced targeting, maybe send them an email, all this sort of stuff. Because if you're not taking actions, then it's just like you have the data. It's like, so what? So I think those are the 2 big ones, right? Like keep the lens of your brand, be objective about it, and know that this is the type of survey I want to run, and these are the type of tricks I want to utilize in order to get the most value. And then 2 is to actually take action so you improve your website, as the data comes in over time. Instead of having to do the housekeeping later on.
Yeah, and to your point about taking action combined with AI, I think one of the really nice things about using AI now is it can, as long as the prompt is appropriate, you can sort through your own bullshit, right? Because we all have our own point of view on stuff, and as a business owner, I might be like, oh, this thing's amazing, but if lots of clients are saying, actually, this one thing is not working as well as it should, and AI is telling you clearly, like, yeah, 80% of customers are saying that your small t-shirt is small when everybody's saying it runs too big, so it really should be a medium or whatever. Then you can finally be like, okay, I actually have to address this, even though I think it fits great. Like it just kind of forces you to get out of your own way in some cases. 100%. And so I think as long as you're not, you don't have your AI set up where it's just telling you you're the best no matter what you say. But if it's analyzing things appropriately and giving you, constructive feedback based on survey data, it should help you just improve your business as long as you don't get in your own way and think that you know better than all your customers. That's what can be cool about using any of the LLMs combined with the survey data. So
100%. Yeah, it does. It takes you out of the equation, right? Because you just let the market tell you what it wants, and it's like, hey, man, that's fine with me. That's why I'm here, right? Like I'm here to help the market. I'm not here to. I mean, like I get it. Some people have like, if you're maybe building like a direct to consumer SaaS or something, like the next Facebook or the next Snapchat or whatever. Like, I get it. But if you're selling stuff online, and I think there's a bit of sort of like humility that should be had and objectivity, and I think it's just like a smart strategy if you want to have a sustainable business and work-life balance and all that sort of stuff.
Cool. Thanks so much for sharing that stuff. Let's move on to the speed round. So,
Yep.
speed round. Each response, like, I don't know, 30 seconds, minutes, something like that. So, what is one book that you typically recommend?
Geez, bold of you to think that I read. No, I'm kidding. I love The Great Gatsby. That's more of probably not a book that is recommended to a ton of people. If we're sticking to business, I like 0 to 1. I know Peter Thiel has a bit of a rep now. I read it before. He did all the stuff. Stay out of politics, but it's a good book. It's got a lot of good info there.
Awesome. And classic with the Gatsby there too. So
I was an English major, believe it or not.
well, I definitely believe it based on that recommendation. So
Yeah.
nice, good stuff. You're blending art and science with what you're working on.
Mhm.
So besides Zigpoll, what's a Shopify app that every brand should know about?
Ooh, that's a good question. Geez, I mean, I'm not in the Shopify biz. Who do I like? I think there are a lot of well-made apps out there. Klaviyo's good. I think Revo's good. I like what they're doing over there. I think that's a good pick.
What's an under the radar brand that you love? Let's say consumer brand.
Consumer brand. I have been buying stuff for the house lately. Let's see. So this is not an under the table brand, but I think Asics. So I used to buy. I run a bit. I used to buy Nike Pegasus once a year, and they would always fall apart. And then I bought a pair of Asics Super Blast 2, and the quality difference in those shoes completely blew my mind. So I'm gonna go with Asics, even though I know it's not under the radar, but you should buy their running shoes.
Cool, good stuff. I'm always on the look for better running kicks. So
Yeah,
nice.
they'll last.
Good deal. What is, if you were gonna have a super quick piece of advice for other solo founders out there, what's one thing you've learned that you would share as kind of a key nugget of wisdom or piece of advice to somebody looking to start their own business as a solo founder?
I think don't give up too early is the advice I would give. I think that was probably what changed my trajectory. Was before I would be, ooh, shiny object. But no, stick with it for a bit longer than you think you should. This stuff takes time. Getting your first customers take time. And then once you sort of have that, it's the only way forward is to sort of stick with it. So stick with it.
Who is somebody you would nominate for a future episode?
I like the guy from Seguno. I think he's really nice. Chris Geis, I think. Weiss? I don't know. Nice guy though. I like him. Actually, yeah, so my backstory with him is speaking of having too many startups and shiny ball syndrome and stuff, back when I built MetaField's Manager in 2016, I also built this music startup called JQBX, where it's kind of just like a virtual living room sort of thing. And he and all the people from Seguno, they used it. And so he knew me as the guy from Jukebox and had no idea that I was building Shopify apps and reached out to me, with that lens. So funny. And now we're both making Shopify apps. So funny, but nice guy. So get him on.
And where can people connect with you to learn more either about yourself or about Zigpoll?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably social media of choice. So LinkedIn, Jason Zigelbaum. But you can always shoot me an email, jason@zigpoll.com, or sign up for the app and fill out the contact us form. I do all the customer support. People don't believe me. It's true. So you can always email me, support@zigpoll.com or jason@zigpoll.com.
Fantastic. Jason, thanks for joining us today and for helping e-commerce brands better understand their customers. One of my favorite things about Zigpoll is that it helps brands move beyond assumptions so they can start making decisions based on what customers are actually telling them. And it's helped our clients improve their business when we install the tech and use it through the whole website revenue optimization program we have. So thank you for building it. Thank you for helping businesses get better from true insights their customers are sharing with them. And thanks for sharing your story and insights with us today on the Shopify Happy Hour.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.